Hear me.
Go live. Drop down menu.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second live YouTube video that I've ever done before. Just want to make sure that you can hear me in the chat. Maybe someone can tell me that you can hear me okay. Wonderful. So welcome to, like I said, this is my second live video. So most of the time I've been doing recorded videos. So here's the first live one. We are actually at 998 subscribers. So hopefully we can get to 1,000 today. So if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, hit the subscribe button, please. Hit the like button. That's going to boost us up into the algorithms, and I appreciate that. And the chat is open, so I'll be taking some questions later on. So please think about what questions you may have, because I'm going to talk about, I am going to talk about the BARKAN method meditation course. But before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of meditation and where it all came from. Because, and the title of the video is how meditation will, not can, but will transform your life. And we're going to talk about that and what the transformation process is about. And it says from a hot yoga perspective. So when I say a hot yoga perspective, I'm talking about our particular lineage in Bengal, India. So I'll give you that whole history about that. So first of all, meditation was started by the yogis. Now, there's so many different types of meditation, styles of meditation, like, for example, Buddhist or Zen meditation, Zen Buddhist meditation, and different types now that have sort of migrated to the West. But the origin of meditation comes from yoga, when it happens to be the highest technique in all of the yogic curriculum. So when we talk about why it was even created in the first place, we're really going to talk about the history of yoga in general, because 6,000 years ago, that's when it started. 6,000 years ago, people were suffering. And the tribal leaders, or the shamans were the first ones to actually intuit the teachings of yoga. The shamans went into a trance-like state to intuit why people were suffering. And in that trance-like state, and it's actually the first sort of meditative state, if you will, they came up with the reason why, and then they came up with a solution. So what they intuited, the reason why people were suffering and why people continue to suffer to this day, is that people are under the illusion that they're separate beings. And in that separation creates a suffering. In that separation, we suffer, and we continue to do that this day. And then what was the solution? And that's when they started to intuit the techniques and the teachings of yoga. Yoga was the solution. So when I'm talking about yoga, I'm not talking about yogic postures. Most of the yoga schools, my school, most of the yoga schools outside of India and in the West, you go to a yoga class, you're going to do yoga postures. We're talking about the higher techniques of yoga, specifically meditation. Because in the meditative state, the yogi can then realize that he's not separate, that he's connected to a much greater power. He's connected to the universe. He's connected to God. And when I say God, I don't mean the yoga's definition of God or my definition of God. It's really whatever God means to you, which is really important because it's very Unitarian. Whatever image or idea of God that you've had all your life, that's what they're talking about. And so when you go into a meditative state, you're actually tapping into a frequency. So I talked about this. I know I've sent some of you emails about what a lot of people have tough time sitting by themselves in a meditative state, because when you close your eyes and everything's dark and you're sitting in a room or whatever, it's hard to sit there and focus. And so the yogis came up with meditation techniques so that you're not just sitting, closing your eyes, and you're on your own, because especially for beginning yogis, it's going to be really hard for you to sit there for a long period of time unless you have something to focus on. And that's where the techniques came along. So now over the last, now we're talking about 6,000 years ago is when yoga started. So we're going to skip ahead. So I know some of you have done my teacher training programs, and we talk a lot about what happened in that first, what I call pre-classical or pre-classical time. But we're going to skip ahead to 4,000 years or 2,000 years ago. And here comes a very famous sage named Patanjali. And Patanjali was the first one to organize all these teachings and create a roadmap to hand to yogis for the very first time. And he systematized the subject of yoga, thus giving the subject its classical form. So now they call classical yoga or Patanjali yoga after Patanjali. Now, I'm definitely going to do a YouTube video one of these days, and I've talked about it before. And I talk about it all the time. That as hatha yogis, which is what I am, what most people in the West practice yoga, we practice yogic postures or asana. When it comes to that tradition, Patanjali is really not the go-to guy. He was more for the yogis that were sitting up in the caves of the Himalayas and meditating all day long. The hatha yogis really come from a different tradition. They come from the tantric tradition. But we're not talking about that now. We're talking about meditation. When it comes to meditation, Patanjali is definitely the man. So Patanjali's concept, which is actually a little different than the traditionalists. The traditional yogis, 4,000 years before Patanjali and up to his time, their concept of yoga was the connection with God, and whatever it is you can do, in Sanskrit it's called Ishvara Pranidhana, dedicate your acts and your deeds to God. But Patanjali comes along and he says, you know what? I can't really connect to God, or I can't connect to the universe. Maybe you don't call it God, but say you call it the universe or spirituality. I can't connect to the universe because I've got this chattering mind, or they call in yoga the monkey mind. So what I have to do is techniques to quiet the mind so that I can connect with the universe. There's a really cool saying. I think Deepak Chopra talked about it. He says, the universe waits for us in the silent space between our thoughts. Because when we have that monkey chattering mind, it prevents us for the immersion and the connection. Because a lot of times when we have that monkey chattering mind, it's really the ego. And the ego doesn't want you to meditate. It doesn't want you to connect and to merge into something else. It wants to keep you separate. It wants to keep you special. So the ego is one of the reasons why we have a tough time sitting quietly alone, because it creates that chatter. So now we've got this chattering mind, or this monkey mind. It's like weeds in a garden. And if you don't pull those weeds out of the garden, if you don't tend to the garden, the weeds will take over. So we don't be very proactive and working to quiet the mind and quiet the chatter, then the weeds will take over, or that monkey mind takes over, and that takes toil and havoc on the nervous system. So back to Deepak Chopra again. He talks about the nervous system and the immune system eavesdropping and communicating with each other. So we got the monkey mind going on, which can cause stress, cause anxiety, especially anxiety. And that puts havoc on the nervous system. And the immune system is eavesdropping into the nervous system. And therefore, not only is it going to cause mental stress, but it could also create havoc on the body, which is almost the opposite of, as hatha yogis, as we strengthen the body in our yoga class through asana, we build the immune system, and now the nervous system is eavesdropping, and that helps to quiet the mind's chatter. But here, meditation is doing it the opposite way. We're quieting the mind, slowing down that monkey chatter, which then helps to heal the nervous system and also simultaneously the immune system, which can not just be, oh, isn't it nice that we quiet the mind? It's not just nice to quiet the mind. When we're able to do that, when we're able to achieve that centeredness, that's where the transformation takes place. It's really extraordinary, because you're able to slow everything down. And when you're able to slow it down, then we're able to connect. We're able to tap into what I call a spiritual frequency. Because like I said, we have a tough time sitting and meditating for long periods of time, even short periods of time, because we don't know what to do. We're sitting there alone. So that's one of the reasons why I came up with the BARKAN Method meditation course, is that you're not going to be alone. I'm going to be there guiding you every step of the way. I've been meditating for over 40 years now, but when I first started, it was tough. And I had these techniques to read and practice, but I still felt sort of separated, sort of felt alone, and I wasn't able to sit there for long periods of time. I wish I had somebody that could help guide me through it, which I will do. But anyway, let's go back. Before I get to that, let's go back to the history. So now Patanjali, in his roadmap to the yogis 2000 years ago, he comes up with what is known as, what everyone knows as, the 8-limb path, or the real Ashtanga yoga. And the 8-limb path prepares us for the meditation, prepares us to get to that higher state. So the first 2 steps, or the first 2 limbs, are things that we learn as children. The yamas, or the thou shalt nots, like the 10 commandments: not shall not kill, thou shalt not lie. The niyamas, the second stage, the second limb, are moral fibers and codes that we learn as children. Patanjali's third limb is asana. Now, in his writings, Patanjali's writings, and they were called the Yoga Sutras, he only really dedicates 2 of his 195 sayings or sutras to asana. That's why I said before, he's not really the go-to guy when it comes to asana. A lot of people perceive him to be inaccurately. Like I said, it's going to be another video I'm going to do one of these days. So only 2 of them were actually dedicated to the yogic postures, even though he was a proponent to keep the body healthy. So asana was, or the postures, was third. Now the 4th through the 6th, not concentration, channeling the breath, pranayama, channeling the life force energy, pratyahara, which is second. Pranayama was 4th. The second to the level of meditation is pratyahara, which is to go within. And I have a great meditation technique on my course to help you to really block out the senses. It's really to eliminate yourself from the distraction of the physical senses. And these are now preparing you for the next stage. So pranayama, life force control; pratyahara, to go within, to block out the external. That's why, just side note for a second, if you're meditating on the beach, we used to do that in our teacher training program, that can be very distracting, because especially if you're the sunset's coming up, if you're on the East Coast, or you're on the West Coast, the sun's coming down, it's gorgeous. And so it's very hard to not be distracted by the nature, because it's so beautiful to look at. So you're really almost doing an open eye meditation, but to close your eyes on the beach, it's distracting. So pranayama, pratyahara, to go within, and then concentration, dharana, and then the 7th and the highest technique, meditation, dhyana. So now, what's the difference between concentration and meditation? Let's talk about that real quick. To concentrate, according to Yogananda, is when you're focusing your mind on one point. So you might have heard meditation techniques like seeing the wave of the ocean and just following the wave. It's an open eye meditation. Or watching the flicker of a flame, and you just watch that flicker of the flame, and it becomes hypnotic. And in that hypnotic state, you go into meditative state. These are, according to Yogananda, dharana, or concentration techniques. Meditation technique is when your focus is on connecting to the divine. Your focus is on connecting with God, or whatever God means to you. So when you're focusing on that immersion with God, or the universe, or spirituality, then according to Yogananda, you're meditating. So that's the difference between the 2. And that all these 7 limbs, and the highest being meditation, brings you to samadhi, which is the ultimate experience of enlightenment, or ecstasy, or the transformation. So, and that's where the transformation takes place. And why is the transformation taking place? Because we're eliminating the suffering. And when we're eliminating the suffering, how we're eliminating the suffering is that you've connected to that frequency. You've connected to that spiritual energy. And when you're able to do that, it's not just, oh, it's nice that I'm not suffering. Oh, it's nice that I'm able to quiet the monkey's chatter. According to the yogis that have reached the state, and I'm not professing to have reached that state, but according to the yogis that have reached that state, it's the most extraordinary experience you can have. Yogananda's number, and I always remembered his number that he used, was 10,000 million times better than any experience he ever had in his life when he was able to tap into that frequency for the first time. Now, we can just look at it from a non-enlightened state. Just to eliminate the stress and anxiety can be extraordinary and is extraordinary, and how it will help you to transform your life. So now we're going to skip ahead from Patanjali to about 1800 years later or 200 years ago. And here comes our lineage. And the very first yogi, the great sage Mahavatar Babaji. Avatar means descending being. He descends to the earth to bring us techniques from the state of Bengal. That's where our yoga comes from, which is more eastern, northeastern part of India. He descends from grace to bring us these techniques, to help us, to give us concrete techniques to quiet the mind. And we're able to quiet the mind and harness the energy, especially in the spine. And I'll talk about that in a second. And we are going to do a meditation technique on this video, so stick with it. And by the way, if you just came on to the feed, thank you for joining us. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We only need 2 more to hit 1,000. That would be wonderful. And hit the like button if you're enjoying this video. I appreciate that. And I do see some questions in the chat, and I will get to those questions in a minute. But back to Patanjali, he now passes on these techniques to his number 1 disciple, Lahiri Mahasaya, passes it on to his number 1 disciple, Swami Sri Yukteswar. All these guys are in Bengal, in the northern part of India. Passes on to his number 1 disciple, Paramahansa Yogananda. And that's what Yogananda then brought to the United States. He came here in 1920, and to this day is known as one of the greatest spiritual gurus that ever came from India to the West. He passed away in 1952, and I found Yogananda in 1981. And through his organization, Self-Realization Fellowship, I started following the prescribed meditation techniques that they taught, that Paramahansa Yogananda taught them, and they passed on to me. So I've been practicing for over 40 years now. And that's what inspired me finally to create a course, to create a meditation course. So here's what I wanted to say before the course. And actually what inspired me to create it in the first place. And I said it in my email, if you've been getting my emails. And I believe it was the pandemic. When the pandemic hit 2 years ago, we were in a frenzy. We really did. It was an unprecedented, uncharted waters. We didn't really know what was going on. And people were now coming to me asking more for the spiritual side of yoga. And I started doing meditation evenings, and it became more and more of a demand. And that, again, is what inspired me. And now, even today, with everything going on in the world, so much going on in the world, we need this now more than ever. And I think it's really great timing. So what I wanted to pass on to you through, and I will share one meditation technique with you today, but what I wanted to pass on to you through this 8-week course is what I've learned to help guide you through, so you're not alone on this journey, that I'm going to be there with you the whole time and guide you through. And it's an 8-week course, and I will take some questions with you. I mean, from you, and I do see some in the chat. We'll get there in a minute. But before I take the questions, let's just do right now one meditation technique, a very short one together, so you can just get a taste of really where we're coming from. Because in our particular style of yoga, one of the main things that we do, which is also similar to the Hatha yogis, is to use the spine and the brain as the channel, as like the conductor, if you will, the conductor to tap into that spiritual frequency. So one of the techniques that we use is called spinal pranayama. So we want to visualize in this technique the breath starting at the very base of the spine. And as we inhale, we're going to visualize the breath rising up the spine in a coiled motion. So from the very base of the spine, as we inhale, it rises up and it comes up to the brain, to the third eye, the sixth chakra. And on the exhale, it goes down in a reverse spiral back to the root chakra. So inhale, it rises up to the third eye. Exhale in a reverse spiral down. So the pranic energy rises in Sanskrit and the aponic energy lowers. And eventually, through these techniques and other techniques that I share with you on the course, we help to awaken a more powerful, subtle energy out of the prana, which is called the Kundalini Shakti. And we use the spine and the brain as a conductor. A famous quote from Yogananda: the spine and the brain are the altars to God. And through the breath and bringing that breath up and down the spine, we can tap into what I call a spiritual frequency. So we're not just closing our eyes and quieting the mind's chatter, because then what happens? Then nothing's going on. We're quieting the chatter so we can tap in to an experience. And the experience is where the transformation comes in. The experience is when there's no chatter and there's a calm, and the nervous system and the immune system are now in balance. And it's really extraordinary feeling. And if you're able to meditate on a daily basis, which I do every morning for almost 40 years, I might have taken a few years in between off, but always came back to it. It is a transformational experience. So here's what we're going to do. Just for a very short time, we're going to sit up nice and tall. If you're sitting on the floor, make sure you're in a position that's comfortable. You don't want to be sitting in a yogic pose where you're going to have to come out of it in 2 minutes. If you're sitting on a chair, put your butt up against the back of the chair so your spine is free. We want the spine to be free in this particular exercise. Now, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to shift our gaze into what I call, or not what I call, but the third eye or the sixth chakra. And you want to keep your gaze there the whole time. Palms up. If you want to do this mudra, it's called chin mudra, where the thumb and index finger come together. You can do that and keep it at your lap. So, eyes closed, nice and tall. Let all the breath out. Keeping your gaze at the third eye. Inhale, the breath rises up the spine. All the way to the sixth chakra at the third eye. On the exhale, it comes down. Inhale up to the third eye. Exhale down. Inhale, the pranic energy rises and coils up. Exhale, the aponic energy lowers and coils down. Keeping your gaze at the third eye. Inhale, it rises. Exhale, lowers. Now continue that at your own pace and your own breath. As you inhale, visualize the breath rising. Exhale, lowers. And as we slow the breath and lengthen the breath up and down the spine, we slow the heart rate. We slow the mind's chatter. One more time, the breath rises up. Exhale, the breath lowers down. And then allow the breath to come back to normal. Continue the gaze into the third eye with your eyes closed. Together we find and experience the technique has brought us to. Thinking of the technique as a vehicle to find this experience of calm. The gentle shift of our gaze helps to quiet the mind's chatter as well. It's not all about the technique. We use the technique to find the experience. And then slowly open your eyes. Wonderful. There's this famous martial artist named Bruce Lee, and he says, don't concentrate on the technique. The technique is like the finger pointing to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger, or you lose all that heavenly glory. So a lot of times people get so stuck in the technique, they forget the experience. So Yogananda would always say after the technique, sit for as long a period as you can, so you can enjoy the effects the techniques have brought us to. And that's where the transformation takes place. That's where we really start to have that calm take over. And all of a sudden you forget about, or at least whatever was going on in your life, changes, the perspective changes. So that's just one very small example. And that really brings us to another point. And that is, if you're having a tough time meditating for half an hour or an hour, that may be too long. I would say do 5 minutes. Like we just did a very, very short period, a very, very short deal, a very short time. If 10 minutes is too long, do 5 minutes for a couple weeks. Now, in the meditation course, the guided meditations are a little bit longer, but I'm there guiding you through it. So that really helps to, you're not going to be stuck because your mind's not going to talk you out of it, because I'm going to be there guiding you along. So let me take a look at some of the questions we have in the chat. Amy says, what would be the best place to meditate at home? That's actually a really great question. You want to find a space in your home, really make a sacred space and a designated space for you to do yoga. Obviously, a place where you're not going to be distracted. So find a place in your home. As you can see behind me, I have an altar. And I put these different statues there that are special to me. So that altar can, the different statues that you have, or lighting a candle, lighting incense, creating a sacred space is really important. And that's one of the first lessons we have in the course. And I show you that. So find a designated space in your house, and you use that all the time. And that's your meditation space. Next question from Janice. What do you think about ambient or meditative music along with the experience? I think at first it's great. And just like me guiding you through the technique is great. At one point, as you become more an experienced meditator, at one point it will distract, because when you want to try to connect into the ether, that'll definitely keep, like I said before, as a beginner, it's really great because it can help you get there. But as you become more experienced, eventually you may want to eliminate that, because the experience you have in the immersion, the meditation may distract you. I mean, the music may distract you from. Let's see. And Yulia said, let's go meditate with Mahavatar next summer. That's a great idea, because Mahavatar Babaji is still alive. So we can trek up to the Himalayas and do a meditation with him. Maybe he will grace us with his presence. Wouldn't that be cool? So I'm going to sum it up right now. The transformation that will happen through meditation is extraordinary. And you want to trust in the techniques. I created the BARKAN Method 8-week meditation course to guide you through every step of the way. So we're on this spiritual journey together. Kim said, the meditation you did with us is great taste of the course. I have a hard time meditating. up and down the spine was great and powerful. It is. It's a wonderful way of channeling that energy up. We call the center channel, or the Sushumna Nadi, which is also a very important aspect in Hatha Yoga as well. There are links in the description below. You can go right to you can find more information about the course. Click on it. I'd love to be your guide. Like I say, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We just need 2 more for us to hit 1,000 subscribers, which would be pretty cool. I'm posting videos every single week on Tuesday. So tomorrow's the next one. It's a really cool one. It's an interview with me and senior Barkan teacher Lana Volgestat when we were in Costa Rica last month. So that's going to be a cool one. It comes out every Tuesday at 7 a.m. So you want to check that out tomorrow. That's going to be I'm really looking forward to that, posting that video. And I thank you all for joining me. I hope to see you in the ether in the meditation course. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. I'd love to get to all those comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Bye, guys.